Let's continue now our daily conversations with the farmdoc team that's traveling across Brazil this week and next week. Gary Schnitke and company went to the Agri Show yesterday. That's essentially the Farm Progress Show in Brazil. I asked him to tell me about it earlier this morning.
Yeah, so we visited on Wednesday. We visited Agri Show, which is in São Paulo State. It's the largest agriculture show in Latin America. And last year there was about 200,000 people attending that show. It is organized by Informa, the same people that organize the Farm Progress Show. Agri Show there's many more commodities at the Agri Show than at the Farm Progress Show. Soybeans would be first, corn, livestock, sugarcane, and coffee. So a lot of different crops, and it does focus on equipment. So we did see a lot of equipment there, and there's more of a focus on equipment than, say, seed and genetics at the Farm Progress Show.
So I suppose you found some of the equipment pretty unusual looking and kind of neat, whether that be sugarcane or coffee. What'd you see?
Yeah, so we saw sugarcane harvesters, which are cool, large, and different than what we see in the United States. Coffee harvesters, and then we also saw obviously the same corn and soybean equipment that we see in the United States. There were the same Deere CNH that are in the United States, have a big presence here in Brazil, and there's a lot of German or European companies here, as well as Brazilian companies that we don't see in the United States as much.
And you all made presentations while you were there?
Yeah, so there was a number of us that made presentations. Joanne Calusi talked about her technology adoption in Brazil and the United States. Eric Morgan talked about agriculture or journalism and science and communication. Nick Paulson talked about FarmDoc and the FarmDoc experience, and I talked about agriculture in the United States.
And you probably were working to get some grad students as well, or maybe new students to the University of Illinois?
Yeah, we at one of our talks, we had quite a few students there from a number of universities here in São Paulo, and many of them seem interested in doing graduate work at the United States.
Of course, that's Gary Schnitke from the U of I, part of the FarmDoc team. So is Joanna Calusi. She organized the event. Thank you, Joanna, for joining us. And I'm sure that Nick and Gary and Eric are really appreciative of you putting this together. At the Agri Show yesterday, you made a presentation on some of the dissertation work that you've done related to the adoption of technology in Brazil compared to the United States. Was there much of a difference in the adoption of technology rates?
Yes. Yesterday we had the opportunity to talk here at Agri Show in Brazil about our results regarding a research that we are doing in Brazil and United States. The focus is how communication affects the adoption of digital technology, specifically in soybean production. The results shows that United States has a little bit higher rates of the technology adoption on the average than in Brazil. When you go for communication channels more influent in Brazil, for example, is LinkedIn, and United States YouTube. So you can see many factors that Brazil and United States has similarities, but otherwise you can see a lot of difference as well.
Do we know why LinkedIn versus YouTube takes place in those two different nations? Is it about access to the internet and the ability to stream?
Regarding Brazil, we saw the average of the age farmers is lower than United States, and the level of education, at least the people that we interviewed, is higher. This factor could explain the influence of LinkedIn, because normally a higher level of education, they access more LinkedIn. Regarding YouTube, we know that YouTube people used a lot, especially to looking for information regarding machines, equipment, and especially after the pandemic, this kind of channel stay even more relevant for looking information or live stream videos. So I would say that because of that.
That's Joanna Calusi. She organized the farmdoc trip to Brazil and is a member of the team and a researcher right here on the Urbana-Champaign campus of the University of Illinois. Eric Morgan is traveling with them. He is a professor of agricultural leadership, education, and communications on campus. That's the AgCom program that I graduated from back in 1986. He also made a presentation at Brazil's counterpart to the Farm Progress Show, the Agri-Show, yesterday.
I was talking about science communication in the agricultural sector, specifically around some of the problems that we encounter with science communication, particularly, and I was speaking to journalists. So, the role of journalism and the role of journalists in translating science. And we talked a little bit about social media, some of the problems of social media amplification and how that can spread misinformation. And, we had a really fun conversation afterwards. There's lots of great questions and great conversation, particularly here in the Brazilian context.
And that had to do with what?
There's a law being proposed at the federal level here in Brazil that would essentially ban fake news. And so we talked about, what's the role of journalism and the press around this new issue, of course, with social media.
And so how would the law determine fake news? I can only imagine you and I could have a long communications discussion about that. I suppose we don't necessarily need to take that up at this point. Communications within the agricultural industry, how important is it?
Well, I think it's critical. I think it's foundational. Science certainly, particularly the agri-science and the agribusiness needs to be communicated broadly, from at all levels, not just from the corporate level in terms of marketing, but also communicating specifically the role of agriculture and its impact on society. Everybody eats, right? The food sector transcends all of society. So, I would say that it's critical, foundational to the agricultural sector.
What are you looking forward to in the rest of the trip?
We're going to go from here to the state of Goiás and then up to Mato Grosso, where we'll be hosted by some farmers. We'll be able to tour some soybean operations. Right now, we're actually kind of sitting in the midst of sugarcane operations, and so it's really interesting.
Thank you much to all of you.
Yeah, thanks.
That's Eric Morgan. He's with the Agricultural Communications, or ALEC, program right here on the Urbana-Champaign campus of the University of Illinois, and is traveling this week and next week with the farmdoc team across Brazil. By the way, if you'd like to learn more about Agri-Show or see updated photos as they come in from the team, you can do that on our website at willag.org, WILLAG.org. I'm Todd Gleason.